Hello, and welcome to our special Patriots preview. This has really become one of our favorite events to bring to all of you, and thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. I'm Scott Thurston, Deputy Sports Editor at the Globe, and I am pleased to be joined for the hour by four terrific colleagues, all of whom I'm sure you are quite familiar with. Jim McBride, our Patriots beat writer.
Hello, everybody.
Nicole Yang, our newest Patriots beat writer.
Hello.
Ben Volen, our national football columnist.
Hello.
And Tara Sullivan, Globe columnist and former NFL beat writer in New York with the Giants. Great to see all you guys again. And tonight, when the NFL season kicks off, we've got Tom Brady and the Bucs raising Super Bowl banner, Super Bowl 55 banner at Raymond James, and they take on the Dallas Cowboys. It's so great to have football back. This is just like Christmas for me. Anyways, there's going to be a special buzz in the air on Sunday too at Gillette Stadium when the Patriots take on the Dolphins. This is the start of the Mac Jones era. And, I really want to get into how this went down with the kid. And Jim, it was really, I think for most people, very surprising when Newton got cut. But in looking back at it in retrospect, what did Jones do to win the job outright, or was there more at play here?
Yeah, I think simply put, he ran the offense the way Josh loves the offense to be run. Quick decisions were made. He got rid of the ball quick. He read through his progressions quick. He did everything that Cam kind of struggled with in his year plus with the Patriots. Cam oftentimes had trouble finding his second and third receivers. Mac didn't. Mac found the open guy, got the ball to him quickly. And the fact that he worked with the second team almost exclusively all summer until that first joint practice with the Giants, when he really turned a lot of heads because he worked with the first team that day and had a superior practice. I think that might have been the tipping point for the Patriots coaching staff.
Ben, what's your take on how it ended here with Newton?
Yeah, I think it was less about Cam versus Mac than Mac versus Mac. And I think once Mac Jones proved to the coaching staff and to the rest of the locker room that he was ready for this, that he could handle this challenge and maybe then some, then I think that made Cam expendable. I wrote 24 hours before they made Mac the starter and they cut Cam, I wrote, Cam is clearly the safer option. Part of my rationale was that I don't know how Cam would respond if he didn't win the job and if he were the backup. And I think Belichick kind of cut that off at the pass by releasing Cam Newton. I think once he decided to go with Mac, I think he had to release Cam Newton. I talked to Edelman last week. He mentioned this. Like, it'd just be too much of a distraction with Cam. He hasn't been a backup since 2008 in college when he was behind Tim Tebow. He's been the man everywhere he's been, college national champion, NFL MVP. You watch him at practice. Cam was clearly the alpha out there. He's dancing and getting guys pumped up. He's never had to take a back seat before. And I think there was, Cam, there was probably some bitterness there that he didn't win the job. And you want Mac Jones to establish himself as the leader of the locker room and to be the clear guy. And you just don't need Cam's presence kind of looming there. So I think once Belichick determined that Mac was the guy, I think he had to release Cam for the best of the team.
Nicole, do you think there was an option there for Newton? Do you think Bill might have gone to Newton and say, look, hey, you're going to be the backup and I can release you if you want to try to win a job somewhere, or you can stay here and back up Mac?
I would be skeptical if they offered a backup role, sort of for the reasons that Ben just outlined. And I wouldn't expect Cam to be interested because he said before he doesn't believe there are 32 quarterbacks that are better than him. And he reiterated that today on his Instagram. He's been teasing this big announcement that's supposed to come out tomorrow. He says it's not a retirement announcement, but it certainly seems related to football because he said today in a video, he doesn't believe there are 32 quarterbacks that are better than him. So I think he still believes he can start in the NFL, and we'll see if that holds true.
Jim, is this a vaccine announcement from Newton?
I don't think so, that as you know, that he's going to get the vaccine. I don't
Yeah.
know. You know, one scenario that I thought about, you know, earlier this week is, you know, before Cam announced he was going to be dropping some news tomorrow, is you know, what happens if Mac gets hurt early on? You know, is he going to burn his bridge tomorrow by, you know, kind of torching the Patriots and Bill, you know, with an Instagram announcement? So I think that, you know, it would probably be in his best interest not to do that, because, you know, if Mac gets hurt in his first couple of games, this is really the best situation for him to come back and be the starter, even though he, you know, he'd probably have to swallow a little bit of pride, because he does believe he's still, you know, among the elite in the NFL at the quarterback position. But he could come in and run this offense, you know, not the one that we're seeing with Mac, but certainly the one that he ran last year. And, you know, and Josh is such a game plan guy. He could come up with a plan. We've seen him, you know, come up with game plans for Jimmy Garoppolo, for Jacoby Brissett, you know, in different weeks. So, you know, I don't know, you know, Cam's got a big ego, and maybe he does drop a bomb tomorrow, but I'm not sure that's in his best interest. But I don't know who's whispering in his ear either.
Well, especially if he wants a job in the NFL, he does not need to be, you know, firebombing the Patriots on his way out the door. So
Agreed.
You know, I assume he's just going to talk about how he's a warrior and he's going to fight through this, and he thinks he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks. But he might have to check his expectations too, because he might think he's one of the 32 best. But I don't see any other team signing Cam certainly not to start. You know, maybe if a team suffers a really bad injury to their starter and they don't like their backup, they could bring Cam in. But you know, I just don't know if any other team really views him at this point. So that's why people have said, a lot of people think Cam might be done with football. You know, not everyone wants to hang around as a backup and kind of kick around the league. And the Patriots are paying him $1.5 million guaranteed still to stay home and not play this year. And plus he's not vaccinated. So I don't know if teams are going to want to, you know, they have to do a 5-day onboarding process. Then you know, he's constantly at risk by not being vaccinated, assuming that he doesn't get it. So he might have to check his expectations. And if he still thinks he's a starter, I just don't know if he's going to end up getting a job.
Well,
running down the list of teams in my head, I don't know where he can come in and be the starter right now over someone else. You know, maybe Houston, maybe Washington, because there's familiarity with Ron Rivera, but I don't think that there's, you know, many teams in the league, if any, that, you know, he could come in and displace a guy. And like Ben said, 5-day waiting period, and the fact that he's not vaccinated, that's, you know, that's going to weigh heavily. That's part of the package.
Let me pick up on that and bring Tara back in, because she's back with us from the car. Hi, Tara.
Hello, everybody. Sorry for the technical glitches. Good to see you all.
Tara, how much do you buy the vaccination dilemma with Cam? Was it a big part of the Belichick decision? Is it going to affect him going forward? And if Jones were to go down or just not be able to handle what's going to be put on his plate, the Patriots are woefully thin behind him. Would Bill reach out to Cam again?
There's such important questions. Like, they are the big questions, but I wish we had definitive answers. Me, logically, I have to believe that the vaccination status had some role here. And I thought Ben early in the year, early in training camp, really hit hard on that issue that, you know, quarterbacks, especially who aren't vaccinated, are putting themselves even at risk beyond health-wise, which is such a big deal, but at risk for their roster spot because they just are so important to be there every day. So, you know, my impression of Belichick when he said the next day that it had nothing to do with it, I think that was more in response to what we saw happen in Jacksonville when, you know, there was a little bit too much honesty when it came to factoring in vaccination status in roster status, because that's not a collectively bargained issue. And I think Bill probably just got the memo like, hey, you know, we cannot acknowledge that this is something we're factoring in at all. But it just, logic to me says it has to be something that people are thinking about. Now, listen, if Mac Jones gets hurt, I think it's a whole, you know, then you have to take more risk and you might be willing to bring him back because what are your other options? I just don't see. We saw Brian Hoyer start last year. I don't know if the offense is, you know, built more directly toward a Mac Jones, Brian Hoyer type this year, that maybe he fits into a Mac Jones offense better than he did to a Cam Newton offense. So maybe they'd give it another shot, but I wouldn't have a lot of confidence. So I wouldn't rule it out bringing a Cam Newton back, but I think the vaccination status just has to be part of the equation personally.
One thing I want to, I should have noted at the top, we've got a lot to cover tonight, obviously, and we'll try to hit on as much as we can. We've received so many great questions, and we're going to take the last 15 minutes or so to answer ones that we may not have addressed along the way. But a quick note, you can use the Q&A tool on the bottom, ask your questions live, and this event's going to be recorded and will be distributed post-event. So ask away if there's anything that I haven't hit on through the remaining 45 minutes here, and we'll get to as much as we can. So moving away, I just got a comment that by definition, Cam Newton is not part of a Patriots preview, but I think it's important to address the Newton.
Neither is Tom Brady, but we talked about him too.
Oh yeah, well, Tom always gets his ink with us, that's for sure. So let's move along to the defense. Jim, you wrote a nice piece earlier in the week, and it's really with this team, they're going to ride on their defense. This is going to be old Patriots football, I think. Talk to me about the new acquisitions and bringing back Van Noy, the return of Hightower, how important that is. Yeah,
I think it's huge. I think the guy that really has stood out to me all camp long was Matthew Judon. He just brought so much energy to this defense. When I wrote about this in the piece, there was that one series he had, or two series, but one series of plays that he had against Washington where he dropped into coverage. I'm seeing Nicole dance back there. That guy confused a little bit.
I was at the stadium and the lights just went off, so I had to motion.
Nicole, was that like the Mac Jones dance at practice or what?
But anyway, no, we saw that Matthew Judon can rush the passer. He can set the edge against the run. He can drop into coverage. I think he's going to be a guy that really revitalizes this front seven. A front seven that struggled mightily against the run at times last year. And, obviously the returns of Hightower, one of the smartest guys in the league, a guy that, diagnoses offensive plays quicker than almost anyone I've ever been around or watched. And Van Noy too, who, he might not be at the top of everyone's list of linebackers in this league, but he's unbelievably versatile. And, he really found his niche in this defense. It's kind of reminds me of Vrabel a little bit, a guy that was, underused in his first stop. And the Patriots identified him as a guy that could fit their system. And he certainly has. I mean, he's won 2 Super Bowls. He seems to always be around the ball. I don't think this defense will have the problem stopping the run that it did last year. And if they can get Gilmore back healthy and happy in week 7, this could be an elite defense. It really could.
So there's.
I was going to jump in there because something Jim said. I had a conversation yesterday with Phil Simms, who everybody knows, is on CBS and is doing is just a big watcher of the Patriots and somebody who's close with Belichick. And he was saying in his own film breakdown, this guy who played in the league forever, he finally even almost gave up trying to guess who was matching up with who and who was whether guys were playing linebacker, inside DN, outside DN. He said they were so interchangeable that even for him on film, it was difficult to figure out. So what does that tell you about what it's going to be like for opponents this year when they're trying to match up against what the Pats are doing? So it's a very interesting, like Jim said, it's a great wrinkle. The versatility seems to be the key to me for what this defense, what might separate it this year.
Yeah, and speaking to Mike Tannenbaum, who was the former Jets and Dolphins GM, about that story, and he said it's just hard for quarterbacks, even veteran quarterbacks, to figure out where the pressure is coming. Mm-hmm. They can line up in the same formation play to play, but it doesn't always mean that the outside linebacker's coming. It could be inside pressure. It could be from a defensive end. So it's very difficult. And, I think that's what's going to be the key to the Patriots. Bill has always wanted guys that are versatile and that, can perform different tasks, not from series to series, but from play to play. And they've got a bunch of those guys this year. And, I didn't even mention Josh Uche, who's, he's going to be a terror.
Go ahead, Ben. You were trying to jump in.
Yeah, just real quick, though, entering the season, I'm starting to get a little concerned about the secondary. They obviously don't have Gilmore for the first 6 games. And now Jalen Mills is out from practice today, and his status is up in the air. And that's what 2 of your top 4 corners. And so JC Jackson is now your number 1. You know, Joejuan Williams, newcomer Sean Wade, those guys are going to have to play a lot more. You know, they're not entering the season on the best footing in the secondary. That's certainly one concern. The only thing that might save them is you look at the first 6 games, and it's not the toughest stretch of quarterbacks, other than obviously Brady in week 4, and I think Dak Prescott in week 6. They start with Tua. Next week, Zach Wilson, who knows? Then Jameis Winston at home. And then week 5 is going to be like Tyrod Taylor. So it is a little bit of a soft opening, but the secondary, they entered the season definitely with some concerns.
What
Yeah,
about
I
Kyle
think-
Duggar making the leap in his second year?
Yeah, I think him and Uche are both going to have, after those guys played well last year, but they didn't have a spring, or, they had a truncated training camp. So I think that they're going to be, benefit greatly from having a full off-season program and a full training camp. So I think both those guys are going to make an impact. And, to Ben's point about the secondary, it'll be interesting to see what they do on Sunday if Mills can't play, because do you move Jonathan Jones to the perimeter? He's usually a slot guy, and put Sean Wade in there because Sean Wade was better as a slot corner in college. Or do you take a chance and put him outside, or Joejuan Williams, who, has struggled at times. So if Jalen Mills can't play on Sunday, that is a big concern, because guys are going to be, out of position.
It looked like they gave Joejuan Williams a really good look the first couple of games here. What Nicole, what did you see from Williams?
I mean, I think they gave him a long look because he's just hasn't been able to earn a regular role. So it was sort of a test for him. And he came up in big moments, like he punched the ball out in one of the preseason games. And I think you hear Adrian Phillips today talking about his improvement. I think his exact quote was like, the dude can cover, because he has size. He's 6'3", I think, like 220. But in the past, it has sort of been the Patriots secondary has been so deep. So maybe that's a reason for why he hasn't been able to play. So now there could be a real opportunity for him to show what he can do.
One guy I've been really intrigued with is Christian Barmore. Jim, how are they going to use Barmore this year? Like situationally, just as a, spot role?
Yeah, it all depends on whether, they're such a hybrid. You can't really pin them into a 4-3 or a 3-4. It all depends on game plan. I mean, a lot of times we see a rookie come in and play a bunch of snaps, and then he disappears for the next game just because that's what the game plan called for. But when they want interior pressure, and I'm thinking, week 4, especially against Brady, who's, obviously been, the best quarterback in the league for forever. But the one thing that's given him trouble is inside pressure. Tara, you know about the Giants creating inside pressure on Tom. So I think that, I wouldn't be surprised to see Godshaw and Barmore kind of teaming up to give some inside pressure, because that guy's really wide, Barmore, and really strong. But we'll see. He's still a rookie.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Scott, I was going to jump in there. I love hearing everybody's impressions, and these guys who've been at the preseason games, of the new talent and the guys, some of the things to get excited about, whether it's second-year guys or rookies. But of course, what did I do today but dip into the well of the veterans on this team? And in the secondary, good old Devin McCourty is still chugging along. And I just think he's at least whatever role physically, but, in terms of the leadership and making sure which guys are coming in, like, it's just such a value to have him too. And for me, I'm always raising my hand, like, don't forget about McCourty, because he just what he brings to the table with that group.
It's funny you should mention him, Tara, because I think about this week's game, and, Brian Flores, whenever he's been asked about his Patriots background, he always kind of downplays it and says, look, we're with the Dolphins now. I'm setting a new standard here. But, last year his captains were Kyle Van Noy, Ted Karras, Landon Roberts. This year his captains are Landon Roberts, Jason McCourty. So he clearly values.
I detect a trend.
Yeah,
yes.
Even though he doesn't want to say it.
Yeah, no, I think he's the closest one of all the proteges, I think. And we know we've talked about how some have not worked out, and Matt Patricia obviously is back with the Patriots this year, but Flores seems to be inching the closest, at least from my impression, of building a somewhat Patriot-like approach to things down there. And yeah, he may not want to say it out loud, but the actions speak louder than the words there.
Definitely.
You know, as we've been talking defense the last few minutes here, a lot of questions have come in about Chase Winovich and where we expect him to do this year. And I myself can't get a good read on Winovich. Really what Bill thinks of him. I know that there has been stories and talk that, you know, he might be out of favor at times with the coaching staff. Jim, what have you seen down there on that?
Yeah, I know there's been people that think that he might have freelanced too much and didn't want to play within the context of the system. And it's funny, when he came back this year for the joint practices in Philadelphia and then got into the Eagles game, and I think he had 2 sacks or a sack and a half in that game. And then he spoke to the media after that game for the first time. And Nicole, I'd be interested to see if you have the same impression. He was very emotional in that press conference, almost to the point where his voice cracked a couple of times. And he said, you know, that I've bought into this system and I'm here to do whatever they want me to do. And it made me feel like maybe he was told at some point, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You're not being told. And, you know, maybe a light bulb clicked with him. But either way, I think he's still destined for, you know, a third down pass rushing specialist. And especially where this front seven is so deep, he's gonna have to make an impact when he does get his snaps.
Yeah, he went out of his way to assert his dedication and like commitment to the team and also be complimentary of Bill's system. So it does lend to maybe there's something up there, especially given last year there was a point where his snaps were cut down and he appeared to be in the doghouse a bit.
Not only freelancing, but he just wasn't stout enough against the run. I remember talking to Ninkovich this offseason, and he said Winovich came up to him after the season, and he you know, asked him what he should do, and Ninkovich was like, you need to put on 15 pounds, because when you're going against those offensive tackles, you know, it's a lot harder to set the edge at 245 than it is at 260. So I think Winovich is noticeably bulkier this year, but I agree with Jim. I still think, you know, you look at some of their offseason additions, especially a guy like Henry Anderson and Gottschall and Barmore defensive tackles. They're the size of defensive tackles, but they can play the end. And they brought in Judon. They brought back Van Noy. They just brought back all these other bodies that they can use to set the edge. And then I assume they'll just use Winovich what he's the best at, which is, you know, run around like his hair's on fire and going after the quarterback. But clearly he knew he wasn't bulky enough. And I noticed he came back to camp with a lot more beef on him this year, but I think he's still probably more destined for a sub rusher role.
Well, it'll be interesting to see on Sunday, you know, how stout they are against the run. You know, with Myles Gaskin, you know, they want to hand the ball off. They want to take some of the pressure off Tua. So it'll be interesting to see with the big bodies up front, whether that's a big change or not.
You could probably flip that right around, right, Scott, and say the same thing about the Patriots, how they run the ball and right?
That's a good transition into going looking at the other side of the ball. I mean, that's what the Patriots want to do, Ben, right? They want to run the ball. They want to run it down your throats this year.
Yes and no. I mean, I think to a point they definitely want to establish the run, but you don't win in today's NFL. You win by scoring points, and you don't score points by running the ball. You still have to be able to throw. And so I think, yeah, they want to be able to run so that it helps their play action game. But I mean, I wrote this in a piece that's online now, and it's in tomorrow's paper. But even Brady in 2001, this notion that he was just like a caretaker, not totally accurate. There were a lot of games where Charlie Weiss had him dropping back 35, 50 times a game, if that's what the game plan called for it. And the Patriots, if they're going to win double-digit games and be successful this year, they need Mac Jones to deliver from the pocket. And you can't just go ground and pound I formation all day. I mean, I think that's definitely going to be – they're going to be one of the higher percentage run teams, but it's still probably going to be under 50%. They're still going to have to throw the ball a lot. And so, yes, 2 tight ends, I think, gives them a lot of options. Mac Jones can go to the line of scrimmage on any play and credibly check into a run or a pass, left side or right side. It just gives them so many options based on how the defense is defending them. But it's still going to be about Mac Jones and his ability to deliver from the pocket.
But what we know is every quarterback has an easier time dropping back and completing those passes when the run game has been established. I mean, I just think that's what that's what Mac Jones needs to be able to throw the ball as much as, to score those points. They have to establish the run first. I think otherwise they're going to come after Mac like, as you guys said, their hair's on fire, right? Opponents are going to target him the way Bill targets rookie quarterbacks. So that's how I just see, like, it's not like they're going in saying we're run first and that's it. Always, first, last, and always run, like we're back to the 1990 Giants or something. But I just think that once they establish that run, suddenly Mac Jones's life is going to get a whole lot easier and a little more wide open.
I mean, Jim, that is the depth position on this team now, right? Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, JJ Taylor, if they use Jacob Johnson.
James White.
Yep.
James White. We haven't even talked about James White, who I think is going to have a huge year this
year for
year.
James White. Because if you remember last year, and I believe this at the beginning of the year, that White was going to have a huge season because I thought Cam would end up checking down to him a lot. Unfortunately, Cam never got to that check down because by the time he got to the White check down, he was already running. I think White's due for a big uptick in catches this year, probably, more like he was the last 3 or 4 seasons prior to last year, where he was just, one of the better pass catching backs in the league. So I think, I'm no fantasy player, but I wouldn't mind James White on my team this year.
Well, this advice is coming about 36 hours too late, Jim. Thanks a lot. Okay. Nicole, the two of the biggest acquisitions, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. The Patriots woefully, underperformed at tight end last year. How important is it going to be for Jones to have that 2 tight end formation with established guys, established pass catchers like Hunter, Henry, and Smith?
It's huge. I mean, I think we haven't seen a lot of them. We haven't seen Hunter Henry in game action at all because of the injury, his shoulder injury during training camp. But I think even Jonnu Smith is like a candidate to catch check down passes. Like, he is a really good ball carrier, can be really effective in catch and run plays. But I think it's also huge because just the lack of wide receiver depth they have right now too. Like, N'Keal Harry is out for 3 weeks. Nelson Aguilar didn't practice today. Jacoby Myers, I think, will be extremely reliable, and this could actually open up opportunities for him because he didn't fare as well. He still had a very productive season last year with over 700 receiving yards, but he didn't fare as well when he was the number 1 guy. But if the attention is drawn elsewhere, maybe that opens up things for him too. But I think, in terms of pass catchers, Jonnu and Hunter should be like at the center of it.
Ben, are the Patriots still thin at wide receiver? When you look at that, look at the players that Nicole just mentioned. I mean, Jacoby Myers, ostensibly your number 1 receiver, and now you bring in Bourne and Nelson Aguilar, who always seems to be hurt and has had an up and down NFL career. Do they need to add a body there with Harry on IR?
Yeah, I mean, who knows who their number 4 receiver is right now? Is it Malcolm Perry? Is it Gunnar Olszewski? Both those guys at that position are pretty unproven, and that's tough to not have a 4th guy ready to go. So I would think that if Aguilar can't go, they're probably going to have to elevate Christian Wilkinson from the practice squad at least for week 1.
I thought he might have been a guy who could actually make the 53-man. Was he close, or was it a close call with him and Harry?
Yeah, had a really strong first 2 weeks of training camp, but then he kind of fell off. He was making catches that he had no right to make, but then towards the end of camp, he was dropping catchable balls. So I think consistency was a concern for the coaching staff, but they still wanted to work with him because he's got good size and he's got good potential. I don't think there was a big battle between him and N'Keal. I think N'Keal was always going to win that, but once he got hurt against the Eagles, Wilkinson had, some opportunities to seize a job and he wasn't able to. So, we'll see. It's a work in progress at that position.
And another real strength of this team is the offensive line. Trent Brown now, and, Shaq Mason, David Andrews is back. Where does this offensive line rank among the 32 NFL teams?
I was talking to Dan Orlovsky last week, the ESPN analyst. He said the Patriots are going to have a top 5 offensive line. Now, I do think the left side has some question marks. Isaiah Wynn has never been able to stay healthy. They're counting on him at left tackle. And Mike Onwenu was great last year at right tackle. Now he's moving to a new position, left guard. They do lose Joe Tooney, who was so solid and dependable for them. So, and David Andrews has had some trouble staying healthy too. So I think it was real smart of them to bring back Ted Karras as kind of their sixth guy off the bench for any of the three interior spots. But assuming, everyone can stay healthy, this does definitely have the chance to be a very, very good offensive line. And especially, I think, having a veteran in David Andrews, that's really going to help Mac a lot at the line of scrimmage, I think. Maybe help processing some of the fronts and identifying the mic and making some of the calls. So certainly this offensive line has the potential to be really good. And I think that's why people are so high on Mac Jones and so high on the Patriots. Of all the rookie quarterbacks, Mac just seems to have the best team around him and the best pieces. So Belichick, at least on paper, seems to have put Mac Jones in a pretty good spot.
Scott, we watched that Giants game, right? With the other Jones, Daniel Jones, right? Daniel Jones right off the bat was running for his life that game. And that's a preseason game, where the Patriots weren't even getting creative or anything. Like, there's a reason. I don't know if Daniel Jones is worthy of the pick they made on him or not. I think the jury's still out, but I sure know it's been hard for him to do it without an offensive line. And I think that's what Ben exactly just said. Like, it gives Mac Jones a better chance because he has so much experience around him on the line.
Jim, how unusual is it for a pure pocket passer like Jones to be able to step in, and be the starter right off the bat, week one? When you look at the recent history of the league, the guys who have played right away, Lamar, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, these guys have the legs. They use their athletic ability to make plays. And not that Jones doesn't have athletic ability, but his real strength is, like you pointed out, accuracy, decision-making. How important is that for him?
Scotty, did you not see his dance moves on the practice field yesterday? This kid's a lot lighter on his feet than people think. No.
Does he have quicker feet than Brady?
No, seriously, I think it is unusual, but I think to Ben's point, they have put him in a really good position. He's behind a very good offensive line. I don't know if it's an elite offensive line. It certainly has a chance to be with the veterans they have there. And that combination with a good running game, that could make this work. That could make a pure pocket passer be successful. Josh, I've talked about it before. He's very good at tailoring game plans to guys' strengths. So he knows that, and Mac Jones has proven this throughout training camp, that he can find not only the guy that's the first read, but he can find the second, third, and check down guys quickly. So he's not going to be running for his life if this offensive line can stay healthy and if these running backs can make some hay. Those are two big ifs, but if they both come true, then he's going to be successful, despite, being that traditional pocket passer that is kind of going the way of the dinosaur in the NFL.
But, rookie quarterbacks in general don't tend to have a lot of success, but some of the classic pocket passers have. 2008, Joe Flacco and Matt Ryan, those guys aren't winning any 40-yard dash contests. They both went 11-5 and made the playoffs as rookies. Dak Prescott isn't a big runner. He went 13-3 as a rookie. Jameis Winston wasn't quite as successful as a rookie. He was more of a classic pocket passer. Andy Dalton, 9-7, made the playoffs. So it can definitely be done. And again, it's more about being able to deliver the football from the pocket than being able to scramble around. But I guess one concern is Mac's ability to avoid the pressure. He did take 5 sacks in the preseason. So defenses are going to be throwing the kitchen sink at him, and he doesn't have the speed to necessarily, run away from guys. So that will be kind of one thing to watch with him.
I will add one thing there. During the preseason games, when he took those 5 sacks, he was always playing behind the second team offensive line. He never really got any series with the guys that are going to be protecting him now. So that might make a difference. It might not, but I think it's worth pointing out.
Well, to that point, how much did he play with Aguilar or Kendrick Bourne? Wasn't he in there usually with Wilkerson and the other kids?
Yeah, he was. So I don't know whether they've turned up, the intensity with those guys in practices now. We don't get to watch the whole practice anymore. Maybe he was building rapport with those guys behind the scenes, but clearly, if he was moving the ball down the field with Christian Wilkerson, with Devin Ross, with Gunnar, then he's going to be able to do it with the guys that are the projected starters.
Nicole, what did you see from Bourne and Aguilar in the preseason? I mean, Bourne was a guy who was he had a good year last year with San Francisco. He was a solid number 2 guy. Eventually down to 3 when Ayuk kind of emerged. What did you see from him in the preseason? And can he come in and be that number 2 guy? I mean, I think they envisioned a bigger role than he seems to have had so far.
Yeah, I think before, like over the summer, Kendrick Bourne was saying that he wanted to be a 10 touchdown, 100 catch, 1,000 yard guy. And I'm not sure whether he'll have the opportunity to put up those numbers, but
Ben's laughing. There's no chance of that. Ben's laughing. Go ahead.
To want.
He clearly has high hopes for himself, and I think he was actually a guy that I saw connect with Cam the most. He seemed to have a similar energy in that he dances a lot and he just is very upbeat, always smiling, seemed to be just a very easygoing guy. So I think he's very eager and is just going through the acclimation process. I think he should work well in the slot with Jacoby, and we'll see once. He wasn't happy, I think, with his second preseason performance. He had said that he wished things had gone a little bit differently. So I think he's still just adjusting. But as you said, like he did prove to be productive in San Francisco. So I think he could follow that up this season too, no problem.
Jim, how often do we see them in
Kendrick Bourne, because he's a delight to talk to from a reporting standpoint. Sorry, go ahead.
How often do we see them in 2 tight end sets? That would really help to alleviate that problem on the outside.
Yeah, I think 12 personnel packages are going to be huge for this offense. Especially with 2 guys that are really good. I mean, they got the best 2 tight ends on the free agent market, and they're going to use both of them a lot. So I think 12 packages, even jumbo tight ends as well. They're having those 2 guys is going to help immensely.
We've seen it before, right, Jim?
Yeah.
Patriots,
they've had some pretty good tight ends back in the day. Yeah.
And 2 at the same time, and they certainly it's certainly a like you said, a personnel grouping. They know how to make it successful to its best degree. And it's just so interesting to me. I love the tight end position. It's like one of my favorites. Is people who read my stuff, and Bavaro, I'll call him any excuse to call Bavaro and talk tight ends. It's just so interesting to me the way it fits into almost every aspect of the offense, that sometimes they're offensive linemen and receivers and running backs and everything in between. And if they love versatility on defense, maybe that's why Bill loves the position so much, because of all the things it can do. But I would think, Scotty, if all goes according to plan and these guys are both healthy, which I know we haven't seen much of it yet, but I think that's the most exciting. Well, Judon is a tough one too, right, Jim? He's one of the more exciting additions, but on offense, seeing those 2 guys together, I mean, to me, that's what brings the excitement. That's what they spent the money on.
Yeah, I'm lose my video. I'm very eager to see Hunter Henry this year for sure. Yeah, very eager to see him play. Nicole, how's it looking for Henry for Sunday?
He hasn't been on any of the injury reports, and he said when he last spoke to us, I think Monday, that he was expecting to play. So I would totally expect him to be out there as a full participant.
And Nicole, staying with you here for a second, the Patriots have a new kicker. Tell us about Quinn Nordin, and what kind of a leash is Bill going to give the rookie kicker?
Quinn Nordin.
Quinn Nordin, okay, all right.
He actually spent the first few weeks of training camp, the players were saying Nordin, and he just didn't bother correcting them.
Okay, then I don't feel so bad then. Okay.
Yeah. But no, I mean, he has a leg. I think in college, his special teams coach estimated his range could be like 70 yards. Now, I don't think any coach would ever feel comfortable unless it was like a game-winning situation giving him a 70-yarder, but he definitely has leg strength that has been clear since high school. He was one of the most highly recruited kickers coming out of high school. He had 14 Division I offers. Interestingly, he also had 13 Division I lacrosse offers, so I'm sure that caught Bill Belichick's eye as well.
Maybe.
But
why do you say that, Nicole?
What makes you think that? Chris Hogan on the phone, please.
The problem, though, throughout high school and college was that he just couldn't really control his emotions. Like he really rode the roller coaster of the highs and the lows. And as a specialist, that just can't really, doesn't always lead to success. Like you really have to stay more even keeled. And I was surprised to learn that, because since we've seen him, he hasn't seemed to show that. Like he hasn't really got, and he's missed kicks, but his emotions haven't really got the best of him. Like he hasn't visibly shown any sort of reaction when he does miss. So the inconsistency, unfortunately, is still there, but it appears he has honed sort of the reactionary part to it, which is good. Because in high school, it sounds like he was really difficult to work with because he would just get so frustrated so easily. And all he would want to do is just keep moving his kicks back, kick it farther and farther and farther. And as soon as he missed, he'd be like, all right, I'm done. And then in college, he had to share the reps with another kicker. So I think that also was challenging for him. So I'm curious to see how long they stick with him, and also whether he can establish some consistency, because if he can just start making kicks from 35 yards as often as he can make a kick from 50 plus, like sure, there's no reason to move away from him. But if there proves to be some issues with the consistency, or if maybe he lets his emotions get the best of him, Nick Folk is right there on the practice squad, and I think he's there for a reason. So I'm curious to see how long whether he just wins the job outright, or whether they do have to end up going back to Folk.
It's
That's a great point. That's a great point, Nicole, because bringing back Folk makes me wonder, because you're allowed to elevate guys from the practice squad now. It makes me wonder if Nordin really is the kicker, or they just kept him on the 53 because they didn't want another team to poach him. So
that was my question, Ben. Yeah. Like, would they have been able to sneak Nordin on a practice squad, or no? Like,
yeah, no chance.
They would have lost him. So it's yeah.
But also interesting is, they spent all this money this offseason. They have all these veterans on the roster, and they clearly, want to get back to the playoffs and get back to contention. And yet they're entrusting it all to a rookie quarterback and a rookie kicker, we think. So that's two more bold moves by Belichick going into the season.
It's the missed extra points that'll drive Belichick crazy. If that happens like it happened in the other game that the kid played, that's not going to sit well.
I don't think he'll tolerate that.
Yeah, and I remember, you guys remember the early days of Gostkowski that first season, and even going back to, I remember Vinatieri that first year. Both those guys were inconsistent. So it's you wonder how long Bill will just like, this is a rookie thing. You got to kind of work through it a little bit. And we have confidence in you. We know you can do it. Get your head together and get your game on.
Well, part of that may be what Nicole just talked about, is watching how he reacts to when there's a little adversity, because like Gostkowski in the time that I've been around, like that's one of the things that was more impressive. He had some tough missed field goals, but it never we obviously know Vinatieri was able to bounce back too. So that may be part of what they're watching for. And maybe Nicole, I'm curious, you guys have been around them, or Jim, like, did he develop a rapport with Folk at all? Like, Folk is such a veteran, is that something that maybe he's learned a little bit, or are they very much like just in competition with each other?
No, it sounds very friendly between the two of them. I'm sure there's a little bit, obviously, when you're competing for a job, there's that maybe deep down. But I think from what I've heard, like everybody has been great to Quinn. And the other thing I was going to say, though, is that this could have been maybe a play for the future, because if we don't think he would have passed through waivers and been a practice squad guy, maybe they do want to just have him moving forward, because Nick Folk is 36 years old. Like, who knows how long he can kick for? Like, the Patriots will need a long-term solution there. So maybe they're looking at Quinn and hoping that he can establish some consistency, and next year, just moving forward, be the long-term option.
And don't forget, the Patriots also have Jake Bailey, who can kick a field goal in an emergency situation. So if they go into a game with Quinn and he misses the first two kicks, an extra point or a short field goal, they can go to Bailey. I mean, he's warmed up before games in the past, taking some field goals. So, I think the leash is short for Quinn, because, not only does he have the shadow of Nick on the practice squad, he's got Jake Bailey right over his shoulder as his holder, really. So the guy's right there.
All right, I want to just go around here and take a few live questions and hit on a couple of things that questions from subscribers that I wasn't able to get to. Who, this is for anybody, who will be the biggest and best surprise on the team this year?
Josh Uche,
That's a good one.
second-year linebacker, had a really good training camp. Had a really good training camp last year as a rookie, but he got hurt at the end of training camp, and that really kind of stunted his growth and his opportunities. But I think, a year playing with Van Noy or a summer playing with Van Noy and Hightower and even Judon, this kid's going to open some eyes. That's my vote.
I don't know if this is a surprise, but I love Jonnu Smith. I think he's going to be such a great piece in this offense. Josh McDaniels is going to have so much fun moving him all over the formation. He's going to be like the tell. Like they're going to move him all, use him as a motion piece, use him out wide. And it's like whoever the defense sends out to cover him will tell Mac Jones everything he needs to know about the coverage. And, this is a guy, he's like 6'3", 6'4", 260 pounds, and he can line up as a tailback and take a pitch left and cut around the edge. And I mean, he's just got incredible speed for a guy his size. So he's scored a lot of touchdowns in Tennessee, but he never put up huge, receiving stats. But I just think in this offense with the money they paid him and the role they're going to give him, I think Jonnu Smith is going to be a game changer this year.
I actually was going to second Jim. I think it's Josh Uche, and you can tell even when you talk to the players, when they talk about the defense, they group him in with like Kyle Van Noy, Matt Judon. Like when they're talking about the veterans, Donta Hightower, they add Josh Uche usually to the end of that. So I think that shows what they expect of him.
What was the question, Scotty? Like biggest and best surprise?
Biggest and best surprise.
I mean, I think the return. Personally, I love the return of Trent Brown. Like, right? It's not a big headline move, but at everything he's said in his interviews this year and his respect for kind of the way things are done, and so happy to be back. Right? Like, I think that maybe that one turns out to be a really smart move.
Another one here. Did the Patriots get fair value in return for Sony Michel? Now, obviously, they deemed Michel expendable with the emergence of Stevenson and Damien Harris. They get a fair pick. It was a 4th round pick they got back, conditional.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's actually a 4th round pick, no matter what, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I think they did. He was in the last year of his contract. They hadn't picked up his option. I think they got fair value. Sure, you'd always like to have as many running backs as you can, but obviously the kind of the emergence of Ramondre Stevenson in the training camp made it possible to trade Sony. So saved a little money on the cap and got a 4th round pick. I don't think they can complain too much.
Yeah, how much
the Ravens would like to have him right now, though.
Yeah, how much faith?
I think either side can complain there. I don't think either side can complain there because Michelle goes there with a Super Bowl ring and a huge value role, and that's I think that's one that worked out for both sides.
How much faith do they have in Damien Harris?
I think a lot. Didn't Belichick call him the starter early in camp? I mean, and Belichick rarely calls anyone a starter. Damien Harris, if I didn't pick Jonnu Smith, I was going to pick Damien Harris. I do think he's going to have a big year. Remember a few years ago, LeGarrette Blount, I think he led the league with like 18 rushing touchdowns. I'm not predicting that for Damien Harris, but especially now that Cam is gone and Cam was kind of the short yardage goal line running back, I do think Damien Harris is going to be the main guy. And if he can stay healthy, I see 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah, big caveat staying healthy there. He seems to get nicked up a little too frequently for my taste.
Yeah.
And Ramondre might like some of those goal line carries too. He's a big boy.
Yeah. I think a guy to keep your eye on too is Ben Mason, the fullback that's on the practice squad. And,
oh yeah.
As much as they've invested a lot of time and effort with Jakob Johnson, you still see him. He's a very willing blocker, but you still see him miss blocks at times. Oftentimes he hits the hole rather than the man. And I think Ben Mason is probably more of that James Devlin, ferocious fullback. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mason gets an elevation sooner rather than later.
Will one of the tight ends lead the team in receiving yards?
Good question.
I'll say yes. I'll say it'll be Jonnu Smith, but I could see Jacoby Myers racking up the yards, just being the reliable 3rd down guy. But I think Jonnu Smith could lead the team in receiving.
Yeah, I think James White leads them in receptions, but Jacoby leads them in yards.
All right, why is it so difficult for the Patriots to draft a wide receiver that fits into their system?
I mean, I just think their offense can be pretty complicated. I know there's a lot of talk of DK Metcalf looks great in Seattle and AJ Brown looks great in Tennessee. And why is N'Keal Harry? I just wonder if any of those guys would thrive in this offense, which I think we've heard over the last 20 years, especially when Tom Brady was the quarterback, was how complicated it is and how much it puts on the receiver for being able to read the defense. But, N'Keal Harry too, I think going on IR as a rookie really set him back. And he just has not been able to stay healthy and productive. And that's been, I think, a big reason why he's been held back. But I wonder if the offense is too complicated at times, because it's kind of remarkable how many young receivers they've had that have struggled to catch on here.
I will say this, if AJ Brown couldn't perform on this team, then there's something wrong with your offense. That's all. He's a terrific talent. And these are guys that they missed on. They could have had DK Metcalf. They could have had AJ Brown. And it's a position that just hasn't, for whatever reason, it hasn't hit going way back. Jim, going back to Hartley Dykes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. The national pass punt and, kick champion when he was a kid. Yeah. Oklahoma State guy. We always thought he was going to be unbelievable. But
Absolutely.
Really
What's really going on with Stephon Gilmore?
It's a good question. Belichick said the other day that he and Gilmore are on the same page. So I know there's some thought that since Gilmore didn't get his contract adjusted, well, if you're only going to pay me $8 million this year, then I'm only going to give you 10 games. Start me on PUP to start the season. I don't know if that's the case, but Belichick did say that he and Gilmore are on the same page. I really hope they don't trade Gilmore. They need him. Yeah. The secondary is so much better when he's the number one cornerback. And after all the money they spent in the offseason and free agency, they clearly are trying to win. And I just don't see how trading away your top cornerback helps you win this year. So I hope they keep him, and I hope he does come back as soon as week 7.
Second that for sure. Because I mean, that's of all the depth for all the depth they have, on paper, him starting on PUP, something goes wrong with JC Jackson and suddenly you're scrambling, and so I would second what Ben said there.
The ability to just cut out half the field the way he can. Yeah. That's
invaluable.
It's very rare in this day and age.
Yeah.
Where does the leadership come from on the offensive side of the ball? It was noticed that Mac Jones was not named a captain. Frankly, I wouldn't have expected Mac Jones to be named a captain as playing his first game in the league. But is it James White? Where does it come from on the offensive side of the ball?
I think David Andrews is a huge leader on that team. James White as well. But it's funny, and this is something that Bill talks about a lot. Like, everybody can provide leadership no matter what year you're in. Like, you can be the leader. Like, he's talked about Brady in the past. Like, when Brady was a rookie, he was a leader on that team of the rookies. So leadership comes from a bunch of different areas. And maybe Mac is huge behind the scenes, and his teammates have talked about his leadership already. So I'm not sure the captain label discounts anyone else from being a leader on this team. I think everyone has a voice, and everybody can be a leader, whether it's of the whole offense or just that position grouping or the whole team. So I don't think there's really ever a leadership void with the Patriots.
Yeah, only the loser teams like the Jaguars and the Jets named their rookie quarterback a captain. That's an honor you got to earn. And Mac's not the captain, but he's going to be a leader of the offense. There's no question. And Jim's right. It's David Andrews, James White, but Mac is definitely going to be a leader, and he doesn't need the captain label to be one.
What's the status of Jarrett Stidham? Guy we haven't talked about at all.
He's at practice every day, obviously not in uniform because he's on PUP, but he stands with the other quarterbacks when they're taking their reps. He's on the sideline during, team drills. He's definitely, and certainly I'm no doctor, and this might sound ridiculous saying this, but he walks very slow still. He still looks like he's, gingerly moving. So I don't know. I wouldn't expect him to make much of an impact this year. He'd have to, back surgery is tough,
I thought mid-October was the time frame that he was supposed to return.
Yeah, and that's like, being on PUP, that's as early as he can return, right? So, we'll see.
Is he on PUP or is he on non-football injury?
I believe he's on PUP.
But I mean, now that they've gotten rid of Cam, I do think they have a depth issue at quarterback. And so I think they, to me, it looked like Stidham was the odd man out. But now that, they've got Hoyer and Garrett Gilbert on the practice squad, and I know they're going to bump a guy up for the game, but they should keep Stidham now. I mean, he's super cheap, and you need bodies, and you've at least developed him for the last 2+ years. So I do think that if he's healthy to come back, that they should keep him just because they don't have great depth behind Mac Jones.
I mean, Brian Hoyer is your backup, right, Jim?
Right now, yeah. But Ben's right. I wouldn't get rid of Stidham either because he's very affordable. I mean, he's only in the 3rd year of his contract. He was a 4th round pick, so he's not breaking the bank. And there's still upside there.
Will they look to bring in another veteran, and specifically people asking about Garoppolo, if they would ever consider bringing him in?
It's just too much money, It's just, and what's the situation is no different than what it is in San Francisco. So he's competing with Trey Lance, and now he'd be competing with Mac Jones, and he just makes too much money. It's bottom line.
Even if the Niners were for some reason to cut him before Sunday, because that's when his $24 million becomes fully guaranteed. The minute they drafted Mac Jones, the door closed on Garoppolo. They're not, even next offseason, I mean, they're not going to dump Mac after 1 year. So like the Garoppolo ship has sailed at this point. They've decided they want Mac Jones.
And they've already given away number 10. So there you go.
That's true. All right. Real quickly, let's go around because we're getting a little bit short on time here. You've all done your seasonal picks, your Patriots picks. Give me your record, and will they make the playoffs? Jim.
Yeah, I think they're going to go 11-6. I think that they won 7 games last year with Cam as the quarterback, and with all the changes they made, I don't think a 4-game addition, plus in the win column is too much to exaggerate from. So I think that they go 11-6. I think they win the AFC East. Don't at me, Buffalo media and mafia.
All right, you heard that, Vic Carucci. All right, Nicole.
I also have them going 11-6, but making the playoffs as a wild card team. I just think their schedule is relatively friendly. I think Mac and Josh complement each other really well. And yeah, I think just going through the schedule seems like they can get 11 wins.
All right, Ben, 3-14, right?
No, I too have them at 11-6, although I'm starting to wish maybe I bumped it down to 10-7, maybe a little more, realistic maybe, but I've got them as the top wild card team, the 5th seed. I think they'll be back. To Jim's point, I think they had the worst talent in the NFL last year, and they still went 7-9. So they've upgraded the roster significantly. I also think the schedule is a lot easier than it was last year. Last year, you had a lot of long road trips, a lot of difficult road trips. It's really not that daunting of a schedule. I mean, you don't know how the team's necessarily going to pan out, but just as far as tough environments and long road trips, it's really not that difficult to schedule. Although I do have the Bills winning the division, and I'm going with the Bills to win the Super Bowl. So,
oh man, all right.
Line up the folding tables. It's going to be Buffalo's year.
All right, Tara.
Well, I have a little bit of everybody. I went 10-7, wild card. Bills win the division and the Super Bowl. I'm not sure I really believe in the Bills, but I like them enough to give it a shot this year. I have them getting to the Super Bowl, and losing to Brady. So
right.
There you go.
We cannot sign off here without acknowledging the biggest regular season game in the history of professional sports coming October 3rd when Brady returns to Foxborough. Okay, and I'll leave you with this. In all likelihood, Brady will break Drew Brees' record for all-time passing yards that night in Foxborough.
Of course he will.
He needs 1,154 yards. If you give him his average of 290,
he might get that against the Cowboys tonight.
If you give him his average of 290 the first 3 weeks of the season, he needs to throw for 285 approximately against the Patriots to break the record. So I think he really wants to get that record at Gillette. And I think we'll end up stopping the game, and there'll be all sorts of accolades for Tom.
Who's going to stop the game? The Patriots?
No, the officials come in, and they take the ball and all of that stuff. His teammates all crowd the field, and
Oh, Bill's going to love that.
I don't see that happening, but it would be a spectacle, that's for sure. I
Something
mean, I certainly see him breaking the record that night. He could do that, but stopping the game, I don't know.
I don't see the passing yards thing is that big of a deal. It's not like the home run record. And like Brady and everyone knows that Patrick Mahomes is going to pass it in 10 years anyway. So I just think, the whole Brady just wants to be Bill and Bill just wants to be Brady. And my hot take is the Patriots are going to win that game. Brady and Brady historically struggles a little bit first month of the season. Obviously I think Belichick wants it. So Patriots are going to win that game at home.
That's why they drafted Christian Barmore for that interior
pressure up the middle, Henry Anderson and Barmore. Go ahead, Nicole.
Just something funny that happened today. Jacoby Myers was speaking to us, and he was asked, like, what did you think when you saw that Miami was going to be the season opener? And he was talking about, like, oh, he has family from Miami, so he knows a lot of people are going to be tuning in. And then he was like, and I saw when Brady's coming back, and then you could see it in his face. He realized what he had just said, that he had acknowledged not only a game other than their next game, but also that particular game. And he was like, yeah, but I'm really focused on the Dolphins, and like tried to correct.
Oh, he's getting called out at the team meeting.
Like, it's very clear that game, even like all the players have been trained to not bring it up, but even then he couldn't help himself and he let it slip. So there's a lot of anticipation.
All right.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere. Oh, it'll be a great night for sure. All right. On that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Those who are still with us, thanks to you guys for your time and doing this. This is just a great event. And in an hour and a half, we have real NFL football for the first time, and it's exactly, very exciting. So thanks a lot, you guys. And here's to a great season for everybody. Enjoy watching the games.
Thanks, everyone.